Any questions about today's practice?
About 5 days of this. I'm all mixed up. I'd like to frame a question. What is the difference between bare attention, open attention, focusing, mindfulness? Like if I'm focusing on something like with my eyes, I'm focusing on this. If someone is moving here, I see it, but I'm not focusing on it. I have to move to focus on it. How can I, in my mind, do 2 things at once? Like, if I'm trying to follow my thoughts...
Well, we're not trying to follow, we're trying to observe.
I see that they are there, okay? Once I see that they are there, they're gone, because now I'm thinking, my mind is on, the thought and it's gone. So how can I, like, with every organ, I can do one thing?
Correct.
How can I do both with my mind?
Both.
Like, like having thoughts and looking at the thoughts. Once I'm looking at the thoughts, they're gone.
Correct.
So the thought is a looking. And the whole day, for these 2 days, it's really my mind to ways. Like I'm talking to myself all the time. This is how I feel now. I'm going to, and it's in English because I'm going to tell it to you. How I'm going to tell it, how I'm going to explain to it, and it's
yeah.
So is it one after the other, or it's really together? Like you cannot look back and forward together. You have to move.
So the question, I think, is about can we sort of focus on 2 things at once? And of course, the answer is no, and the answer is no. Of course, we can't. But in this practice, the one of observing the mind, well, the object is the mind, and then anything that arises in that space. So when the thought is arising, you observe it. So that is the object. The challenge, of course, is not to get caught up in the object, because if we get caught up in the object, then we're lost.
Okay, this is obvious.
Yeah.
This I understand. This is when, this I know, when I drift away.
Sure.
Okay, but when I'm, like, when I was talking to you in my head, I knew I was talking, like I was singing. I was aware of it. Like,
right.
Trying to...
So what happens often, and this is the difference between... I think I mentioned the other day of observing thoughts and mindfully thinking about something. That's not the same thing. If we're mindfully thinking about the cup, we're focusing on the cup. If we're observing the thought about the cup, we're focusing on the thought, not the cup. So, but what's happening, I think, that you're describing is that normally if some thought comes up and we get caught up in it, we're lost. But then we can start to notice that, and what will happen usually is we'll notice that, but then we'll go back into it again, and then we'll notice it again. So we're moving backwards and forwards very quickly between getting caught up and observing. So it seems like we're doing at the same time, but technically that's impossible. What's really happening is in 1 or 2 seconds we're moving backwards and forwards maybe 20 times. And so every time, of course, we get caught up, that's fragmenting our observing. So this is something we're going to look a little bit, we're going to start to look at this chart this evening. But particularly tomorrow evening, I want to look at these middling sections. And this is really what's going on in the middling sections, is that at the start, whatever the object is, we're mostly distracted. Mostly distracted. But then we improve, and then we're mainly on the object, but the quality is not good. And this is the case here, is that if we're observing the thoughts and we're not completely lost, the quality is not so good because we're going backwards and forwards between observing and getting caught up a bit. Observing, getting caught up. But we're not fully caught up, so we're completely gone. So what we're doing is we're continually observing so that the backwards and forwards, there's less grasping and more observing. So the fragmenting gets less and less and less. So then we can eventually we can continuously watch the thought without any grasping to it. But that, of course, is
but still it's
way up.
But still it's one after the other. It's not
What's one after the other?
the thought and the thing, the watching, the observing. It's like, as you said, it's very, very quick.
No, the what's quick.
Together.
What's quick is observing or getting caught up. We're going backwards and forwards. But we are observing the thought as it is arising. If we're not getting caught up, we are observing the thought as it arises, because that is the object. And then we just watch it, and what will happen is, because we're not getting caught up, it'll go like this, like super fast.
But what will go like?
The thought will disappear. Thought will disappear.
Okay, and the watching of the thought, the thought.
Well, then you're, instead of watching the thought, because the thought's disappeared, you're watching the space now where that thought emerged and where it was abiding, and then it's disappeared, so we're still watching. So it's watching 100% of the time, that space. Sometimes there's nothing in that space, and sometimes a thought appears in that space and then disappears very quickly, like this.
And this is very weird.
And what happens normally is, of course, a thought appears and we go, ah, good, and we're gone. But then slowly gone for less time and we're back. You know, maybe we're gone for minutes and we go, oh, hang on, and we come back. Next thought, oop, gone again, back, 2 seconds, back, gone again, 2 seconds back, and then we'll be gone for slowly for less time, and then thought will come and we'll start to go and we'll go, oh, okay, and then we'll be able to be there, and then what's happening is then we're doing this backwards and forwards, and then slowly that gets less, and then then it's up and gone, up, gone, and then every time we're not following it, the habit of that coming up get less and less. That 4-stage model: waterfall, fast-flowing river, slow-moving river, still lake. So if we keep watching, eventually there'll just be stillness.
So this is the ideal. This is the ideal purpose that you.
Well, that's the goal of Shamatha.
This is the goal, that you will not be kidnapped even for a second. This is the idea.
Yeah. Of course.
Excuse me for being so stupid. It's not,
Yeah. So then if we're not kidnapped, we're in control suddenly. Up until every time we're kidnapped, the mind is in control.
Yes, okay, I'm not kidnapped, so where
Sure.
am I? Am I watching this flower? Watching, no association, no remembering anything, nothing. If something like, I don't know, back to the.
Yeah. I mean, it would be if your object is the flower or your breath,
Whatever.
you're 100% there. You're never taken away by anything.
If I'm.
And that's why I said when you get into the higher levels of the practice, because you're so there, and let's say we're watching the mind, because you're so focused there and calm and clear, your sense faculties shut down.
So
Which means if you're there and you start talking, and I'm 100% there, you start talking, I won't hear anything. There'll be sound waves hitting my eardrum, but I won't hear anything.
And this is the purpose?
I won't hear it. Well, purpose, I mean, that's a sign that the practice is going very well.
But that means this is the purpose.
It means then we're 100% focused and not distracted,
So
yes.
I'm supposed to get to a situation when I'm speaking to Glen, my brain doesn't have simultaneously any other thought.
I'm talking in meditation now. You're talking daily life.
I'm talking daily life.
So in daily life, how that will bring into daily life, it means that we can be 100% focused on whatever we want. We're in control now. We can be, and the mind's not deciding where to go. We're deciding.
Okay.
We want to focus on this. We're focusing on this. We're 100% there.
Daily life.
In daily life. We're not sort of like this. So it means we're calm, not stressed, not distracted, and very effective in everything we do. And we decide when we want to think.
how can you fall in love? How can you be enthusiastic if this is your position?
Yeah.
It's pure enthusiasm. This is pure enthusiasm. It's pure joy. Pure joy. Now our joy is with craving and attachment. This is agitating. But this is, and again, sometimes in the Shamatha it talks about the three qualities of clarity, non-conceptuality, bliss. That word bliss can be a bit misleading. We might think, oh, that means it's like this. But actually it's like completely, and it's a different quality to it. It's like, it's hard to describe because we're always stimulus-driven bliss, which is quite agitating to the mind. This is like completely, and it's like a level of joy that is far superior to any sort of agitating bliss. And we can be in that state.
I'm listening to you. It's for me, it's a science fiction, but
Science fiction. It is. I mean, for the vast majority of the population, it is science fiction.
you know, well, I want to make sure that I understand where.
Yeah, very good.
I was thinking today about all the teaching that you gave, and I asked myself, what is in the common denominator of all the practices that you taught us? And what I was thinking, I'm not sure. The basic, the most important idea is not to be kidnapped, not to have what I call kidnapped, what you call.
Sure. Yeah, in the Shamatha practice, that's it. Yeah.
This is the idea. All these are practices to watch the breathing, to do this, watch awareness of awareness. This is what in common. Not, I mean, all these are tools in order not to, that my inner story, my inner film will take me.
Exactly.
This is the
And
idea.
on top of that, not only that, but also then to be clear on whatever to be very clear as well.
If you are not kidnapped, your energy is make it clear.
Yeah, but
It's not
you can be focused on something without being crystal clear. So anyway, but the main thing is that's the first step.
Not to be kidnapped.
Yeah.
Not to be kidnapped.
Yeah. So we're in control in daily life. We're not sort of all over the place.
Several times occurred to me in open meditation.
The one we just did,
Open awareness. Yes.
open awareness, yeah.
Yes, I did it before. and
Sure.
Every time I do it, a brilliant idea comes up, and I miss the meditation, and then I come back because I saw a picture, and it was very important to me, and I caught up with it for a while. I made a brilliant solution for something. I'm happy. And then I came back and said, oh, that was, I got caught. I'm happy. And I went back to the meditation.
Yeah.
But I felt that I missed the meditation.
Yeah. So the question is that when we're in this meditation, sometimes some great idea comes up and then we get caught up in that. So the answer to that actually is in this chart. So now that you've asked the question, we'll get the answer here. So if you look in this chart, halfway up on the left side, you see the monkey in the tree. The monkey is conceptual thought in general, and it's holding some fruit. And it says underneath number 19. So if we go on to the next page, number 19 says, since virtuous thoughts are an interruption at the time of shamatha meditation, it is necessary to stop them. At other times it is not necessary. Which means that, and exactly that's been your experience, is that, and I think I mentioned this the other day when we were talking about creativity, is that when we go deeper into the shamatha practice, whatever the object is, and our mind starts to calm down and become more stable and more clear, that is creating the situation or environment for creativity to easily surface. Because creativity is coming from a deeper level of mind. Now that creativity is being obscured or suffocated by our agitated, disturbed mind. So once that settles down, it becomes more calm, more clear, the creativity will come through. And particularly if there are certain things in our life that some issues or something we want to resolve or get an answer to, and we've been trying to work it out, and we have an intention there, we want an answer, then often that is the very time the answer comes. Because we have the intention, but as I think Einstein said, you can't solve a problem at the level that you created it at. And usually a lot of our problems are created in our discursive blah, blah, blah mind. And so then we're trying to solve it using the same level of mind, and often it doesn't work very well. But if we set the intention to want to solve it and get as much information about the situation as possible, then one good thing to do is, if no solution immediately comes by thinking about it, drop it, but have the intention still that you want an answer, and then go into this practice, and very often, boof, here comes the answer. But what the rabbit is saying in that diagram, that's not the time to entertain that great idea. So therefore, what we are to do, if some great idea or some virtuous thought arises in Shamatha, is go, okay, good idea, I'll attend to that after the meditation. If we're worried about forgetting it, we can have a little notepad where we meditate and just jot down a couple of key words and go back to the meditation. So that's what's being said there. Right down the back.
One direction was to observe the movement of the mind. Is it the movement of the mind or the movement within the mind?
So the question is, the instruction was to observe the movements of the mind, or is it more the movements in the mind? I mean, it's just the way of speaking. So of course, all appearances appear within the mind. So you could say the movements in the mind or the movements of the mind. I'm not sure it's really saying anything different. Is that different for you?
But the mind move, or something move?
The movements of the mind is like saying the waves of the ocean. So
within
yeah.
The ocean.
Yeah, so remember, the mind and the appearances in the mind, thoughts and so forth, are not two different things. So we could say that mind, or just awareness, of course, awareness itself is not moving, but all movements take place within that awareness. So it's just a way of speaking. Does that answer your question?
Okay, let's think about it.
Meditate on it.
Yeah.
I had an insight I want to share.
Sure.
The last meditation in the morning, it was so hard for me, the last 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all the time moving from dullness to strain. I all the time felt here that I shouldn't, open my eyes, maybe to close. All the time I was. And at noon when I rest, I read something and the word was expand that I read, and softness. And you all the time say relax, and I didn't. And I wrote.
I have to relax. I have to relax.
No, I read something how to relax. So I read the sentence that what comes. And here I understood that I was expecting the thing that you wrote. The waterfall.
Oh, the waterfall.
I expected something.
Ah.
Now I understood that I expected something, and I left it. Whatever will be, will be.
Yeah.
And then
The tension.
my eyes were open. Nothing hurt me.
Very good.
It was so nice and easy eventually, and it's like, and the word expand, like a thought shrinked
the expandence, it's like I will shrink and then expand. Shrink to a thought or something, or a sound, and the expand, like my organ. My anchor was not the breath, the
Expansion. Yeah.
expansion.
Yeah. That is the stillness of awareness.
Yes, so it's like I could do it forever now.
Great. Fantastic.
So hard at noon.
And I think
So
that's
all this makes me a lot of expectations.
Yeah.
To see something, and it was here. I had a headache after.
yeah. Again, we need to is really have no expectations. To really just relax and whatever's again in this practice of observing the mind. It doesn't matter whatever's appearing. Whatever's appearing is okay. Everything is okay. Everything's okay. If it's still, it's okay. If there's lots of thoughts, a lot of emotions, a lot of everything is okay. We just need to just watch that. We just watch that show. That's it. Whatever's there is okay.
I hope I will remember it for the next time.
I don't understand why the state in which the senses are closed is considered to be an achievement. Because we said that we want our eyes to be open and we want everything to be used in daily life.
Correct. So
If
so
our
we're
senses are closed, how can we?
no, that won't happen in daily life. We're talking in meditation.
But don't we want the state of meditation to be in our daily life? To be in this...
Correct. And so if we bring shamatha into daily life, we'll be fully present in everything, including our senses.
But they will be open.
Yes, in daily life. Yes, absolutely. Fully open. Because we're not going to be in shamatha in daily life, but the effect of shamatha will be in daily life.
It's connect to this question. It's look like, and I want to see if I understood it well, that in this fourth stage of the Dorjam Lingpa said that the senses are closed.
In the
fourth stage.
oh the shamatha, self-illuminating.
It's look as if we are entering while we are aware to the stage of in the cycle of sleep with no dream. Is it so?
So the question is shamatha the same as deep sleep?
No. This fourth stage, the shamatha.
Yeah.
Is it that we are entering while we are aware to the non-dream sleep?
I think in deep sleep there is a lack of clarity. So
Not if we are aware of it.
that's not deep sleep then. That's lucid sleep.
This is what I
Oh,
mean.
lucid sleep.
Lucid sleep in no dream.
Yeah, but I think we can be in lucid.
Entering to this from.
I think we can be in lucid sleep well before we ever achieve shamatha. So we're not in shamatha if we're in lucid sleep. But lucid sleep is not as easy, of course, as lucid dreaming. Lucid sleep is a little bit more subtle level of mind, but I think we could cultivate lucid sleep but certainly before we achieve shamatha.
This is not what I asked. I asked if the shamatha, this stage of shamatha, bring us to the same experience of the luminosity of the mind.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that the luminosity or clarity is far greater in shamatha than in lucid sleep. Lucid sleep is lacking that clarity.
Okay, in shamatha it's much greater.
Sorry?
What is lucid sleep?
Lucid sleep is to know you're in deep sleep when you're in deep sleep. You can develop that ability. I mean, you've heard about lucid dreaming, to know you're dreaming when you're dreaming. You can also be aware of being in deep sleep. A bit more difficult than lucid sleep.
So
lucid dreaming.